welcome to another day in the Milky Way. And tonight we got a great book for you. I'm going to continue reading with this book here, The Star Library. And tonight we're going to be going on. This is an old book from the 1800s. And it's my life, a story of life in the Rocky Mountains. And we're going to continue on right where we picked up last night. So if you like hearing these stories and just enjoying, I'm going to be telling you them, and we're going to present some pictures here too so that you can kind of see what's going on. And of course, things like that, because who doesn't like to, see pictures and see what's going on? Because it just makes the story that much interesting. It's all good. I put that. Okay. Entire screen. Oh, why is this like this? Okay. And there we go. Voila. So let's get back to our story. The story about how, our compadre there, he is going to do some investigating. And he's going to the Rocky Mountains. He went to St. Louis area by the Mississippi River, and he is checking things out. And he enlisted in with a fur trading company to take him to his destination. And he's getting his wagons and his provisions and everything, and they're about ready to head out. So we're going to pick up right where we left off there. So with that, here we go. Okay, but I want to thank you for all taking your time to listen to me. Please give me a thumbs up. Share this out. If you find somebody who wants to know about this kind of stuff, this would be great. Thank you. Thank you to everybody. Okay. His dress and appearance are equally similar. His skin, from constant exposure, assumes a hue almost as dark as that of the aborigine, and his features and physical structure attain a rough and hardy cast. His hair, though inattention, becomes long and coarse and brushy and loose and dangles upon his shoulders. His head is summoned out by a low-crowned wool hat, a rude substitute of his own manufacture. His clothes are of buckskin, gaily fringed at the seams, with strings of the same material, cut and made in a fashion particular to himself and associates. The deer and buffalo furnish him with the required covering for his feet, which he fabricates at the impulse of want. His waist is encircled with a belt of leather, holding encased his butcher knife and pistols, while from his neck is suspended a bullet pouch, securely fastened to his belt. In front of his and beneath the right arm hangs a powder horn, transversely from his shoulder, behind which, upon the strap attached to it, are affixed his bullets, molded ball screws, wiper, all and see. With a gun stick made of some hard wood and a good rifle placed in his hands, carrying from his 30 to 35 balls to a pound, the reader will have before him a correct likeness of a genuine mountaineer when fully equipped. This costume prevails not only in the mountain proper, but also in the less settled portions of Oregon and California. The mountaineer is his own manufacturer, tailor, and shoemaker, and butcher, and fully accounted and supplied with ammunition in good game country. He can always feed and clothe himself and enjoy all the comforts of his situation affords. No wonder, then, his proud spirit expanding with the intuitive knowledge of noble independence becomes devotedly attached to those regions and habits that permit him to stalk forth a sovereign amid nature's loveliest works. Our company, however, were not all mountaineers. Some were only entered apprentices, and others mere greenhorns. Taking everything into consideration, perhaps, it was quite as agreeably composed as circumstances would well admit of. If glancing over the crowd, I remarked several consonants sinister and malignant, but consented to suspend judgment till the character of each should be proven by his conduct. Hence, it is the succeeding pages I shall only speak of characters as have occasion to speak of men. As a whole, the party before me presented a choice collection of local varieties. Here was the narrative or the native of France, of Canada, of England, of Hudson Bay, of Connecticut, of Pennsylvania, of New York, of Kentucky, of Illinois, of Missouri, and of the Rocky Mountains, all congregated to act as in unison for a specific purpose. It might well require the pencil of Hagarth to picture such a motley group. Our company had not as yet attained its full numerical strength, a small division of it. It was some distance in advance of another behind, and at least 2 days would be necessary to complete the arrangements prior to its leaving. The idea of suspending 2 days in camp, notwithstanding the beauty of its location, was by no means agreeable, but as the case was beyond remedy, I quietly submitted and managed to while away the tedious interval as best I could. A brief acquaintance with our commandant found him a man of small stature and gentlemanly deportment, though savoring somewhat of a narrogance and self-sufficiency, faults, by the way, not uncommon in little men. He had been engaged in the Indian trade for several years past, and had seen many ups and downs in former life. Graduating from West Point in his younger days, he soon after received the commission of Lieutenant of Dragoons in the U.S. Army, and served in that capacity for about 6 to 8 years. On the frontier at the forts of Gibson and Leavenworth, being possessed of a confidence of this man, his subsequent resignation was the occasion of great or much regret with those he had been accustomed to command. The private soldier loved him for his generous frankness and readiness to overlook minor offenses even upon the first show of penance. Such unbounded popularity at length exceeded the jealousy of his brother officers, and gave birth to a combination against him, which nothing could appease short of his removal from the army. Aware of his ardent temperament and strong party notions as a politician, and equally violent upon the opposite side, they managed to inveigle him into a discussion of the measures and plans of the then administration of national affairs. Argumenting in the excitement of feeling, he made use of the unguarded expression denouncing the chief magistrate. This was immediately noted down, and charges were promptly preferred against him for the abuse of a superior officer. The whole affair was then referred to court-martial, composed exclusively of political opponents, and evidence was so strong he had little to expect from their hands, and consequently threw up his commission to avert the disgrace of being cashiered, since he has been engaged in his present business. He appeared to be a man of general information and well versed in science and literature. Indeed, I felt highly gratified in having an acquaintance so far congenial to my own taste. And a session of 2 wagons and 4 men having completed our number, the morning of September 4th was ushered in with the din of preparations for the immediate start. The lading of the wagons was then severely overhauled and more compactly adjusted, and our arms were deposited with the other freight, until such time as circumstances should call for them. All hurried and confusion and oft times and sharp tone of angry dispute arose above the jargon of the tumultuous throng. At length the word was given to advance, and in an instant the whole caravan was in motion. Those disconnected with the wagons, mounted upon horseback, led the van, followed by the teams and their attendants in the Indian file. As the loose cattle and horses brought up the rear, the scene to me portrayed a novelty quite amusing. I began to think a more comical looking set could scarcely be found anywhere. But the events of the day soon convinced me of my mistake. Traveling leisurely along for some 6 or 8 miles, strange objects were seen in the distance, which on near approach proved a company of Mexican traders on their way to the Independence for an equipment of goods. As they filed past us, I had full scope for the exercise of my responsibilities. If the mountaineer and the mountain company are languable objects, a Mexican and a Mexican company are triply so. The first thing that excites attention upon meeting one of the mongrel race is the ludicrous apology for pantaloons. This is generally made of deer or buffalo skin, similar to our present fashion, except the legs, which are left unsewn from the thigh downwards. A loose pair of cotton drawers, cut and made in the manner, and worn beneath, imparts to his every movement a more gross appearance, leaving at each step of the wearer his denuded leg with that of his pantaloons on one side and drawers on the other, fluttering in the breeze. The next thing that meets the gaze is his black, slouching, broad-brimmed hat, a sombrero, though little darker than the features in opulence, and far less so the coarse, jet-colored hair, and protrudes from beneath it, and falls confusedly upon his shoulders. Next, if the weather tolerates the habit, a coarse, partly colored blanket envelops the body from his shoulders downwards, fixed to his place in an aperture in the center, though, which the head is thrust and securely girded at pleasure by the waistband of leather. His arms, if arms, he has, consist of a rude bow and arrows slung to his back, or an odd fuse, not unfrequently without flintlock or ammunition, but doubly armed, and proudly too is he who can carry a good rifle with powder and lead, even if he be ignorant of their use. Thus appearing these creatures, some mounted upon mules with heavy spurs attached to their heels, bearing gaffs an inch and a half in length, jingling in response to the rolling motions of the wearer, in accordance to the bludgeoning Spanish saddles, finished with such ample leather skirts as almost hid the diminutive animal that bore them, and large wooden stirrups, some 3 inches broad, were riding at their ease, while others, half naked, were trudging along on foot, driving their teams or following their erratic mules of the caravan to heap upon them the ready melancholies of their prolific vocabulary. Passing on, we were engrossed. Como lo pasta, caballeros? The situation was returned by a simple nod. Habla en lingua español, señores. A shake of his head was only response. Es el camino el independence? No reply. Carraro, que corras llanaros demres en el camino de la independencia. Still no answer. Chica, Margero, tenemos los Americos en NASA diablo. By this time, the crowd had passed and left us no longer annoyed by his presence. The conclusion irresistibly forced itself upon my mind. If these are true specimens of Mexicans, it is no wonder why they're inside both the pity and contempt of the rest of the world. Subsistence, intercourse with them, however, has served to convince me that the first impressions in this case, instead of exceeding the reality, fell far short of the true mark. Continuing our course, we saw large numbers of prairie hens and succeeded in killing several. These birds assimilate the English grouse in appearance and are of a dusky brown with short tails and narrowing peak wings. As little less than the size of a domestic fowl, their flesh is tender and superior in flavor. When alarmed, they start with a cracking noise and whiz through the air, not unlike the partridge. They are very numerous on the frontier prairies and extend to the Rocky Mountains, Oregon, California, and New Mexico. About sundown, we reached a small creek known as Elm Grove and encamped for the night. With every indication of an approaching storm, strict orders were accordingly given to secure the animals, and process of picketing was speedily underway. This consisted in driving small stakes, pickets, firmly into the ground at proper distances apart, to which the animals were severally tied by strong cords, a plan that should find nightly practice among all travelers of the grand prairies, to prevent those losses which, despite the utmost precaution, will not unfrequently occur. Timber proved quite scarce in this vicinity, and it was with great difficulty we procured sufficient for cooking purposes. The men now began to prepare for the coming storm. Some disposed of themselves and others under the wagons, making barricades to the windward, others erratic shanties by means of slender sticks planted in parallel rows 5 or 6 feet apart and interwoven at the tops so as to form an arch of suitable height, over which was spread a roofage of robes or blankets, while others snugly engrossed themselves beneath and ready picketed tent bade the defiance to the wind and the weather. Being one of those selecting a place under the wagons, I retired at an early hour to snooze away the night, and despite the anticipations of an unpleasant time, I soon lost myself in a sweet slumber, utterly unconscious of everything around me. In thoughts, I wandered back to the home of my childhood to converse with my friends, whose names and features fond memory has chained to my heart, while imagination roamed with delight amid the scenes endeared to me by earliest and most cherished recollections. But all the sweet pencilings of fancy were at once spoiled by the uncivil intrusion of a full torrent of water that came pouring from the hillside and forced the impetuous way into the valley below, diluting me from head to foot in its descent. My condition, as the reader may well suppose, was far from being inevitable. However, resolved to make the best of a bad thing, after wringing the water from my drenched bedding, I selected another spot and again adjusted myself to pass the dreary interval till morning. This I succeeded in doing. How or in what manner it is unnecessary to say. Sleep was utterly out of the question, and I am quite sure I never hailed the welcome morn with greater delight than on this occasion. Others of the company fared almost as bad as myself, and there was scarcely a dry bed in camp. But the little concern evidenced by the mountaineers for their mishaps surprised me most. They crawled from their beddings, reeking with wet as good humorly as though their nocturnal bath had in no wise disturbed their equanimity and impaired their comfort. The morning proved so disagreeable, 2 or 3 of our party, who were accompany us for the purpose of adventure, concluded this is a kind of adventure, and they will be unwilling to meet, wisely resolved to take the back track, and according left for home. Towards night, the rain ceased, and the clouds having dispersed, we were again en route. Traveling on till late, we encamped in an open prairie, and early in the morning resumed our course. Having reached a small creek about 10 o'clock, we halted for breakfast, where another Santa Fe company came up. This proved a party of Americans with some 6 or 8 wagons and a large number of horses and mules on their homeward journey. They also, in their possession, an elk nearly full grown, 2 black-tailed deer, and an antelope, and a white-tailed fawn. Though through them we received intelligence of a battle recently fought between the Pawnee and the Arapaho Indians at the lower Cinnamore Springs, south of the Arkansas. The former had been defeated with great slaughter, losing their horses and 72 of their bravest warriors. And to increase the trophies and unleaven the scalp dances of their enemies, this action occurred directly upon the Santa Fe Trail, and the dead yet bestewed the prairie as the informants passed, half devoured by wolves and filling the air with noisome stench as they wasted beneath the influence of scorching sun. An approving murmur ran through the crowd while listening to the recital, and all united to denounce the Pawnees as a dangerous and vicious set, and wished for their utter extermination. Oh boy, this has been quite the chapter. Oh, let's see. The Potawatomis, chapter 3. We're on chapter 3 already. Okay, we got about 5 or 8 minutes left. Potawatomis crossing the Washashua, adventure in the spring. The Cough Chief, Kansas River Indians, and pleading for whiskey. Okay, let's get on with this. Continuing our course. Okay, continuing our course, we bore to the right and struck the northern or Platte Trail, and after traveling 8 or 10 miles, made camp upon a small creek skirted with heavy timber called Blackjack. An early start in the morning brought us to the Washashara, a considerable tributary of the Kansas, where a junction was formed with our advance party. The territory lying upon the stream as far as south as the Council Grove, a noted place on the Mexican Trail, 144 miles west of Independence, belongs to the Potawatomis. These Indians are very wealthy and are partially civilized, and most of them being tillers of the ground, their dwellings are very simple construction. Large strips of bark firmly tied to a framework of poles with small apertures to admit light, furnishing the exterior while the interior is finished by a suspension of 2 or 3 blankets between the apartments and partitions, and erecting a few scaffoldings for bedsteads. The fireplace in warm weather is out of doors, but in the winter it occupies the center of the building, from which the smoke, unaided by jam or chimney, is left to find its way through an opening in the roof. Some, however, are beginning to improve in the style of architecture, and now and then we finally find a tolerably spacious and comfortable house among them. The Catholics have several missionaries with this tribe and are using great exertions, if not to annihilate their condition, at least to proselyte them into their own particular faith. The missionaries of other Christian denominations are also devoting themselves for their benefit, and not unfrequently with gratifying success. The remainder of the day was occupied in crossing the creek, a task by no means easy. Its banks being so precipitous, we were compelled to lower our wagons by means of ropes. In so doing, it required the utmost caution to prevent them from oversetting nearer advance proved to be a white man and an Indian. The former was immediately recognized by our engages as an old acquaintance by the name of Brown, who had been their recent captain and voyage of the mountains. His story was soon told. A few days subsequent to his arrival in the States, a difficulty had occurred. Between him, a difficulty occurred between him and another person who received a severe wound from a knife by the hand of Brown during the affray with the latter was necessitated to consult his own safety by hurdled fight. He accordingly bade farewell both to enemies and law, and left for the Indian country. Traveling most of the way by night, 2 weeks afterwards he arrived in the Kansas nation and remained with the Indians now accompanying him to wait our return. Having listened to his story, I began to survey his strange his strange companion. He was a village chief of the Kaw tribe, and the first of his race I have ever seen so nearly dressed in his native costume. In person, he was tall and stout-built, with broad shoulders and chest, brawny arms and legs, and features evincing of an uncontaminated blood of aborigine. His hair was closely shaved to the scalp, with the exception of a narrow tuft centerwise from the forehead to the crown, so trimmed it stood on end like the bristles of a warring hog. Then his whole head and face were so lavishly debalmed with vermilion, our experienced city belles would doubtlessly have considered it an unpardonable waste of the useful material. A string of bear's claws, tastefully arranged, encircled his neck, while ample folds of brass wire above the wrists and elbows furnished an admirably. From his ears hung rude ornaments, some of silver, others of brass or iron, cruelly distending the flexible members that bore them. A dirty white blanket, drawn closely around his shoulders, enveloped the body, which was breech cloth and leggings formed his sole covering. A bow and arrows slung to his back by a strap passing over his left shoulder and under the right arm were his only weapons. A belt begirthing the waist sustained his tobacco pouch and butcher knife and completed his attire and armament. Thus habited appeared before the Kaw chief, holding in one hand the lead rope of his horse, and in the other the wing of a wild turkey with a long stemmed pipe carved from a hard red stone, handsomely wrought and finely polished. Taken together, we presented an amusing spectacle of real curiosity. Having shaken hands with the company and turned his horse to graze in a few moments, his pipe was subject to his design use, and as the inhaled fumes merely curved from his mouth to his nostrils, he never and anon presented it from indulgence of the bystanders. His knowledge of English was limited to a simple, modestly good, which he took occasion to pronounce in intervals as he thought proper. September 8th. Continuing on, we encamped towards night at a small creek within 6 miles of the crossing of the Kansas River. Here a bevy of our chief's villagers, rigid in their rude fashion, came flocking up, and apparently to gratify their curiosity in gazing at us, but really in exception of some trifling presents or in question or quest of favorable opportunity for indulging their innate propensities for theft. However, they found little encouragement, as the vigilance of our guards more than equal in the cunning of our visitors. During their stay, we were frequently solicited for donations of tobacco and ammunition, as they expressed it, in payment for passing through their country. This was individually demanded with all the assurance of government, revenue officers, or the keepers of regular toll bridges, strongly reminding one of the petty nations upon the borders of Kansas. Okay, they required tribute as the Israelites, passing through them to possess and all of their forefathers. Okay, we'll stop there, and we will continue on for September 9th next time. Oh, yeah. Where's stop share? There we go. All righty then. Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed that little bit. That was pretty good. We'll continue on with their September 9th. Just seems like this goes on and on, but it's well described. I think the writer really describes everything in great detail. For me, reading it, it seems to be a little hard to understand, but for you, the listener, I bet you're getting more out of it than I am. But I'm amazed at how good the description is. You know, he strung the thing over his shoulder with the belt. I mean, you know, he had a white coat that was partially on him, and it was dirty. I mean, this guy that's writing this doesn't leave out a thing. He's got it all there. Well, I hope you all enjoyed that. And with that, you know, come and join me in the next for the next part 3. As we continue on, as he heads out into the wilderness to experience things as with the trappers. So remember, go out and do something nice, everyone. This has been great. Thank you all for coming. Fun. Think about how cool it'd be to live back in those days. I just amazed over the whole thing. Remember, go out and be the frequency you want to receive, everyone. Love you all. Peace, everybody.